How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Shudder Magazine. This is issue number 2 from February 2022. So yeah, issue number 2, this magazine's still really early on, but because this is a spin-off of the Creeps, it still very much already knows its identity and the stories it wants to tell, even though we're so early in this issue. But another really fun issue. If you guys like the Creeps or the sister magazine Vampiress Carmilla, Shudder is still very much in that main vein and stays very, very fun. So to anyone who's unfamiliar with any of these magazines, Shudder is a black and white, classically styled horror anthology comic, and in each issue you're going to get about probably 6 stories, and they'll all be short, but they all have some really cool idea or twist on a commonly told story. So very classic, but the ideas in the stories are all new and very creative, so I really do like them. So let's go ahead and first take a look at this cover. I really do like this cover. Very striking blue and orange on the front. You get 2 werewolves peering over this tombstone there, the nice haunted house in the background, and your witch character, you know, so the Happy Halloween cover, which is pretty cool. I really do like this cover. Really nice, you know, keeps the painterly lines and stuff, but still very, very classic Halloween, you know. So a really fun cover. Got to like that. Now we open the magazine up and we find the inside of the cover, the back of the cover there, and this time around it's Auntie's Fearsome Fables. And this time she's talking about the Frankenstein monster. Now in issue 1, this was an introduction by Old Aunt Shudder. So this is the first time we're seeing what they're going to do with the inside cover. And they're talking about Frankenstein's monster, which is a really classic monster. But one thing they're doing that's different than Creeps did or Carmilla did is here they start talking about the movie history. This is Edison's Frankenstein monster, and Edison was one of he was the first filmmaker to make a Frankenstein movie. It was one of the first movies ever made. Really classic there. And then, of course, you have to talk about Universal and, of course, their bride character there. So I do like that it's talking about the movies, and I'm kind of wondering if that's going to be Shudder's twist on it, is that they'll talk about a monster but also talk about its interpretations in other media. And maybe that's just for this one, but I am curious, is this going to be kind of like a media tale type thing? Anyway, the page after that is your table of contents for Shudder number 2, and you get the preview images of what you might see in this magazine, and the credits on the top if you want to pause and read that. But anyway, we have Dear Aunt Shudder, that's the letters page, Happy Halloween, Who's the Dummy, so a ventriloquist dummy one, those are always really, really fun, Flesh for Fantasy, The Farmhouse, Under His Heads, and Hell to Pay. So let's go ahead and jump right into the stories. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the stories are about. Oh, before I get into the stories, I should mention the first letter page there, people reacting to the first issue, so that's cool. Alright, now on to the stories proper, and we're going to begin with the Happy Halloween story, and we get the in-comic version of that cover there, and the giant moon behind him. You know, I don't mind going into abstract territories, especially in comics, so yeah, let's make the moon that big. That's pretty crazy. But of course, how did we get here? and we cut to just a little bit before. We find this girl who is going to Halloween parties dressed up as a witch, and her car is breaking down, so she has to go out and look for help. She goes through the graveyard, and she sees this guy who she thinks is dressed up as a werewolf, but is starting to act a little strange and, of course, threatening. So she starts to run for help. And you remember that on the cover of this, there was a farmhouse. Well, that's in the comic too, and she goes there trying to seek help. But of course, it's not going to be that easy. It does have a few twists on the werewolf idea towards the end, but for the most part is a good classic werewolf tale, a good escape the monster tale, just a good classic story, you know? Moving along to the second story, Who's the Dummy? And you get Old Aunt Shudder with a dummy version of herself, and you see that this guy has become a really successful ventriloquist, you know? So he's there, he's drawing crowds, he's booking bigger and better venues, and he has his wife there and his manager who helped him get all the specials, and, you know, now he's doing successful. However, of course, it's anthology horror. There's got to be backstabbing, betrayal, and affairs, but, so the wife and the manager are having an affair, and of course, the ventriloquist and his dummy, I do love the dummy putting his hand up to his mouth there, the ventriloquist and his dummy begin to find out, and a bunch of strange things start happening around these people, and the dummy is always going to be there. So, you know, it's another case of the dummy's getting revenge, but can I really trust, you know, like, no one's going to really believe it's the dummy, and that's going to kind of shift blame onto this guy. And he's like, no, it's not me. And it does end in a very loud, over-the-top, and unexpected way. But overall, a pretty cool story. Your faithful dummy getting revenge for you, you know? Anyway, moving on to this next story, Flesh for Fantasy. And we get these two fantasy creatures lunging at each other, but it, of course, isn't real. It's actually these two little models. And we get this guy, he's a big movie producer, looking at them, and it turns out they were made by Harry O'Brien, who I'm guessing is a stand-in for Ray Harryhausen. And this producer, the special effects guy, actually died, and he bought his estate because he was hoping to figure out what made the models look so good, because he says they're better and more fluid than any special effects that I can pull off with computers, and he's wanting to know how he did it. And so he bought the estate to look over everything and try to figure out just what was going on. But there's no real clues as to how he did it, not even many books on movies. But there is a strange book on voodoo, which I wonder if that will come in handy later. But we also get a flashback to him as a kid going to see the seventh voyage of Hercules, and you get to see just why he loved, you know, the guy's movies, you know, and that is really cool to throw in this element to show that he really was a fan and that he really did like this guy's movies. So that is pretty fun there. And overall, yeah, you know, if you're into movies and you like the little stop motion figures, this is a pretty fun story. Moving right along to the old Creep, no, it's not the old Creeps classic horror anymore. What are they calling it? Greetings, Aunt Shudder's Decrepit Classics. But anyway, we get this story. This guy falls in love with a woman, and everyone says, oh, you don't want to fall in love with her because her family's cursed. Her dad used to be a pastor and then became a devil worshiper, and he marries her anyway. but she turns to drinking and she gets really ugly, and he suspects that she's become a witch. The story is called At the Farmhouse, and this is from author E.F. Benson. But you can see some of the other things that happened to this lady's family. One of them became insane and started wandering the street. Another hung themselves, and another one got possessed there. So everyone in this family has had incredibly bad luck, and he married into it. Or rather, I think those three were actually people that married into the family. But then he definitely knows that she's a witch, and he's decided to go and murder her. So, you know, the rest of the plot will be, can he get away with that? You know, so a good classic witch tale, you know, and a good classic backstabbing murder plot. I really do love that the Creeps decided to, that Shudder decided to keep the classic horror tales that the Creeps was doing. Really glad to still see those around. I do love really classic, you know, 100-year-old horror. But the next one is called Under His Heads, and you get a group of people. They have an exclusive hunting club, and this guy's invited them in to take a look at his collection and see if he's going to be able to join the club. But they are very exclusive. He comes in and he shows them around his collection of all his regular animals, and they're not very impressed. And that's when he says, okay, time to look at my secret collection. And you find out that this guy has been hunting all the supernatural monsters, you know. So he's got the Gill Man and a Yeti, and he's killed a werewolf and a vampire. And he talks about how in the cases where they're going to turn back or disintegrate, he has to work really quickly to get embalming fluid in there, or like the vampire's head would have just turned into a skull or something. So a pretty cool story, you know, a good monster hunter story. But of course, there's going to be more to it than that. The Creeps, Shudder, Carmilla, they all have all these great twists at the end, you know. So you're introduced to a very unique character, a hunter, but not a big game hunter, a monster hunter. But of course, the plot is going to go kind of crazy. But anyway, moving along, this is actually our last story of the issue. A gunfighter wakes up in a mysterious place, and this one's called Hell to Pay. And you see this other guy who's been there for a while says, hey, we're going to wait on the ferryman. You better have your coin ready, you know. And he explains that you don't want to just stick around here waiting, because if you don't have your coin ready and you can't go on to the other side, then all these monsters are going to crawl out of the river and eat you, so you better be ready to move on. But of course, the guy notices he doesn't have a coin, and he can't really get one because you're in the underworld right now. So that's going to be his predicament. How does he get the ride with the ferryman and make it out of there without getting eaten by these monsters? By the way, I really do love this shot, all these monsters in the foreground and their two silhouettes back there, and even that hand right there at the front. That's a cool panel. But anyway, really like this story. I think it's actually one of the shorter ones, but it really does a good job. And also, the ferryman is a character that I think is really interesting. Kind of like the Grim Reaper, but a little bit different. And I think, you know, it's good to get more stories with the ferryman. And also, hey, give him a cowboy to be the main character of this story. That's pretty fun. Anyway, Shudder issue 2, another classic issue. You know, a bunch of stories that I really do like. You know, fun little killer miniatures, a guy hunting the universal monsters, the ferryman. There's a lot to like in Shudder issue 2. And if you guys had been reading the Creeps, definitely make the jump over to Shudder. It's a lot more of what you like. And overall, I definitely like this issue as well. And like I said earlier, a really fun cover for it. So definitely recommend you guys checking this issue out. Lots of really, really fun stuff. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching, and to everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Creeps/Shudder/Vampiress Carmilla playlist, and you can find my review for issue 1 there, as well as the issues of Carmilla and some of the Creeps. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Shudder playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.